Okay, let's unpack this. Germany. For so long, it's been the picture of European economic strength, German engineering, efficiency, a stable core at the heart of the continent.
Absolutely. That's the reputation, isn't it?
But the last few years have thrown curveballs at, well, every economy on the planet. So, what does the German economy really look like today underneath the headlines and all the recent turbulence?
That's precisely the question we're diving into. We've been given a substantial stack of material articles, research analysis, and these pieces are going to be our guides. They provide the data, the historical grounding, and the recent insights we need to understand the real picture.
Right. So our goal isn't just a surface level overview. It's to go deep into this material, extracting the most important insights and, those knowledge nuggets. Think of it as your shortcut to being genuinely well informed on this complex subject.
Exactly.
What are the fundamental strengths that remain? What specific challenges have emerged recently? And how are they sort of impacting things? And critically, where does all this information suggest Germany's economy is heading?
Absolutely. And while we'll focus heavily on recent years and the current situation, the material makes it really clear you can't understand the present without appreciating the historical journey. So we're going to briefly trace that path first, drawing on the context provided. Get ready to cover a lot of ground.
A lot indeed. So let's start at the beginning of this journey then. Where do we kick off?
Well, we need to go way back, actually, before modern Germany even existed. The material takes us to a pre-industrial era, a fragmented landscape focused primarily on agriculture and regional trade.
Okay.
But even then, there were sophisticated economic structures emerging, like the Hanseatic League.
Ah, the Hanseatic League.
Yeah.
Right. You're talking about those powerful alliances of northern German trading cities like Lübeck, Hamburg, Bremen.
Exactly, Bill.
For centuries, they dominated trade routes across the Baltic and North Seas. It's a fascinating early example of how trade, connectivity, and, well, strategic alliances were kind of baked into this region's economic DNA from way back.
Precisely. This foundation of trade and regional strength really set the stage for the spark of industrialization in the 19th century. The material highlights some key catalysts for this rapid transformation. The Zollverein, the German customs union, established in 1834, was absolutely pivotal.
The Zollverein, right.
It effectively removed internal trade barriers between the numerous German states.
Which is like taking the handbrake off the economy, isn't it? Suddenly, goods, capital, innovation could flow much more freely within this vast area, creating a much larger single market.
It really was. And hand in hand with that was the massive expansion of the railway network,
Yeah, the railways.
laying down thousands of kilometers of track throughout the mid-19th century, connecting industrial centers, coal fields, ports, didn't just improve transport. It turbocharged industrialization. It linked resources, factories, and markets on a scale nobody had seen before.
Yeah, connecting everything up. Exactly. This economic integration and industrial momentum were powerful drivers behind political unification in 1871. The creation of the German Empire under Bismarck solidified a strong national economy.
And Germany rapidly ascended, becoming a leading industrial power in Europe, particularly excelling in heavy industries like steel, coal, chemicals, right after the start of World War I.
Dominant.
But that period of dominance was brutally interrupted. The material underscores a subsequent era of immense turbulence and, well, profound setbacks. World War I devastated the economy,
Completely.
and the aftermath brought one of history's most infamous examples of hyperinflation in the early 1920s. We see staggering figures cited, like 4.2 trillion marks equating to just $1 in 1923.
Can you even imagine?
It's unbelievable. Can you imagine the daily chaos? Prices doubling overnight, needing literal suitcases or even wheelbarrows of cash for basic goods.
It's a stark illustration of how economic instability can just become completely overwhelming. That period was followed by the harsh impact of the Great Depression, where unemployment in Germany soared to a crippling 30%. 30%.
Yeah. Then came the unique trajectory of the Nazi economy, which, as the material notes, was heavily geared towards rearmament and war production, a state-controlled system that ultimately culminated in the widespread destruction of World War II.
So by 1945, the economy was just in ruins. Cities, factories, infrastructure, so much of it was destroyed.
Total devastation in many places.
So the jump from that point to the robust economy we know today feels almost miraculous. And that's where the Wirtschaftswunder, the economic miracle, comes in. The material details the key factors that powered this post-war recovery in West Germany.
A critical element was external support, particularly USA through the Marshall Plan. We see figures cited mentioning $1.5 billion specifically channeled to help rebuild West Germany's industrial base and infrastructure.
That's a huge amount of money for the time.
It really was. And a crucial domestic policy was the introduction of the Deutschmark in 1948. This wasn't just a new currency, it decisively stabilized the monetary system and finally put an end to that debilitating post-war inflation.
So stability restored, aid flowing.
Exactly. And the 1950s and 60s saw explosive industrial growth. This is the era when the automotive industry truly cemented its global leadership. Companies like Volkswagen, BMW, Mercedes-Benz rapidly rebuilt and innovated, becoming international symbols of quality and reliability.
Building that reputation for German engineering that lasts today.
Absolutely. They built a reputation that continues to define German manufacturing. However, it's vital to remember the country was divided. The material contrasts the success of West Germany, with its market-oriented, export-driven, and increasingly integrated economy within the European Union,
Right.
with the centrally planned socialist economy of East Germany, which lags significantly in terms of productivity and innovation.
And that division created a massive economic challenge when the Berlin Wall fell in 1989 and Germany reunified in 1990. Integrating the much weaker East German economy into the West was an enormous, costly undertaking.
Huge. The material provides estimates of over $2 trillion spent on that process over the subsequent decades.
2 trillion euros.
Yeah. It's a testament to the scale of the infrastructure upgrades, environmental cleanup, economic restructuring, everything required.
A long-term national project indeed.
Definitely. Fast forward to the modern era, and Germany has continued to evolve. Adopting the euro and fully integrating into the EU in 1999 solidified its position as the economic anchor of Europe and its largest single economy. The material notes its relative resilience during the 2008 global financial crisis, partly credited to those strong manufacturing exports providing a stable base.
They also highlight major policy shifts like the energy wend, the energy transition, that deliberate long-term strategy to move away from fossil fuels and nuclear power towards renewables.
A really significant ongoing transformation.
And then the more recent global disruptions, the material specifically points out the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, where GDP fell by 4.9%, though government stimulus packages helped to mitigate the worst effects.
They did cushion the blow somewhat. And today, as the data shows, Germany remains a global economic heavyweight, the world's fourth largest economy, still leading in many of those key industrial and technological sectors that has defined its success.
Okay, so that historical sweep gives us the context. It's a story of rapid industrialization, overcoming devastating setbacks, rebuilding, adapting. Quite a journey.
It certainly is.
Now, let's shift to the present structure. Looking at the fundamental pillars that hold up the German economy today based on this material.
Right. Without question, the industrial sector remains the backbone. The material consistently emphasizes its central role and significance.
It's a massive contributor to GDP, right?
Yeah.
Accounting for somewhere between, 30 to 35%. That really solidifies Germany's position as the leading industrial nation in Europe.
Absolutely. And this isn't just one thing, it's a diverse range of key sectors. Automotive manufacturing might be the most globally recognized.
Sure, everyone knows the cars.
But mechanical engineering, chemicals, electrical equipment, and pharmaceuticals are also vital engines of the economy.
Okay, let's zero in on the automotive sector for a moment, because the material provides quite a bit of detail here, highlighting its sheer scale and global importance.
It's hard to overstate. Germany isn't just a leading automotive producer. It's one of the top worldwide and Europe's largest exporter of vehicles. We're talking about the home ground of major global players like the Volkswagen Group, BMW, Daimler, now Mercedes-Benz Group, and Audi.
Giants of the industry.
Truly.
The economic footprint is huge. This material states it contributes roughly 5% directly to Germany's GDP, and its export orientation is incredibly strong. Over 70% of the vehicles produced in Germany are destined for markets abroad.
That level of export dependence is really a defining characteristic.
Yeah, that's right.
And the employment figures are substantial. Directly within the automotive industry, you're looking at around 800,000 to 900,000 jobs.
Just directly.
Just directly. But when you factor in the vast network of suppliers, logistics-related services, the total employment impact reaches into the millions.
Wow. And it's not an industry standing still, is it? The material points to significant annual R&D investment, running between 30–40 billion.
Massive investment.
With a major strategic pivot towards e-mobility and electric vehicles. That level of investment shows a clear focus on adapting for the future, trying to stay ahead.
They have to, really. Moving on to another critical industrial area highlighted, the metallurgical industry. Germany holds a leading position in Europe for both steel and non-ferrous metals.
Steel production alone is mentioned as often exceeding 35 million metric tons annually. That's a colossal amount of raw material forming the base for countless other industries.
It is. Key companies in this sector include major players like ThyssenKrupp and Salzgitter AG in steel, and ArcelorMittal also has operations. In non-ferrous metals, Arubis, based in Hamburg, is specifically mentioned as one of the world's largest copper producers.
So these are not niche industries either. The steel sector directly employs around 85,000, 90,000 people, with hundreds of thousands more jobs reliant on its output across manufacturing.
Exactly. Yeah. Now, while these large corporations are significant, the material also draws attention to a foundational element of Germany's industrial strength that is less visible globally, but absolutely crucial domestically. The Mittelstand?
Ah, yes, the middle stand. The small and medium-sized enterprises. These are often family-owned businesses, right? Frequently operating in highly specialized niche markets.
That's them. They constitute a massive part of the industrial base we're discussing. They are renowned for their engineering excellence, innovation within their specific fields, and their position as hidden champions.
Hidden
Yeah,
champions.
as a term used because they often hold world-leading market shares in very particular products or components, even if their brand isn't widely known outside their industry. They provide resilience and deep specialization to the whole economy.
Fascinating. So industry is the powerhouse, driving exports and a large chunk of GDP. But it's not the largest part of the overall economy, is it?
No, it's not. That title belongs to the services sector. The material indicates that services account for the largest share, 75% of Germany's GDP, and employ around 70% of the total workforce. So while manufacturing is key for exports, the domestic economy and employment are really dominated by services.
And it's an incredibly broad category, encompassing everything from banking and finance, IT and telecom, tourism and retail, through to logistics, education, healthcare, public administration. The list goes on.
It does. Within the services sector, Frankfurt stands out as a major international financial center. It's home to pivotal institutions like the European Central Bank, the ECB,
Yep, the
and major German banks like Deutsche Bank and Commerzbank, making it a critical node in European finance.
The material also touches on the growing importance of innovation and the digital economy within services. Cities like Berlin and Munich are noted as developing hubs for digital startups, tech companies, and creative industries.
Yeah, there's a real buzz in those cities. This growth is supported by national initiatives, such as the Digital Strategy 2025, which focuses on strengthening digital infrastructure, improving digital skills through education, and fostering innovation ecosystems.
And Germany's also active internationally on this, right? Trying to shape digital policy.
Yes, actively engaging in shaping international digital policy to align with its economic interests and values.
Okay, let's take a closer look at tourism and hospitality, a significant component of the services sector mentioned. Germany is a major destination in Europe.
It really is. The hospitality sector is vast, with over 50,000 hotels known for high standards of service and an increasing emphasis on sustainability practices.
And the economic impact is substantial, contributing 4–5% of GDP and supporting millions of jobs across hotels, restaurants, transport, attractions.
It's a big employer. Visitor numbers are also showing strong signs of recovery post-pandemic. Data points to preliminary figures for 2024 showing international tourist arrivals reaching around 38–40 million, which is approaching or even exceeding pre-pandemic levels.
That's quite a bounce back.
It is. And crucially, domestic tourism also plays a very strong role, contributing significantly to the overall figures. Lots of Germans holiday within Germany.
So it's a mix of international draw and Germans exploring their own country. Seasonal peaks and major events like Oktoberfest, Christmas markets, or various festivals drive concentrated periods of activity in specific cities and regions.
Absolutely. Key urban centers like Berlin, Munich, Hamburg, Frankfurt attract large numbers of visitors, and the material also mentions the appeal of natural landscapes, highlighting the Middle Rhine Valley, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, known for its castles, vineyards, scenic beauty.
Beautiful area.
It really is.
Okay, so we have the industrial engine and the vast services landscape. What about the primary sectors, the fundamental ones like agriculture, forestry, and fisheries?
They represent a smaller portion of GDP compared to industry and services, but they are essential for land use, resources, and regional economies. The material indicates that agriculture utilizes about half of Germany's total land area, roughly 16.7 million hectares.
Half the land, wow. The average farm size is noted as around 63 hectares, but it's important that it's not just large-scale operations. Small and traditional family farms still make up a significant number.
That's right. There's also a notable trend towards organic farming, now covering over 10% of agricultural land.
Good to see. And what are they growing?
A diverse range of important crops. Wheat, barley vital for the brewing industry, of course.
Yeah, after.
Corn, potatoes, sugar beets, apples, and grapes, supporting the significant German wine production regions as well.
Speaking of the land, forests cover a substantial portion too.
They do. Roughly 32% of Germany's land, approximately 11.4 million hectares, is forested. The material emphasizes a long-standing commitment to sustainable forestry policies, where timber growth consistently exceeds the amount harvested.
So they're managing it carefully. They specifically mention close-to-nature forestry, which prioritizes biodiversity and ecological health over maximizing timber yield through practices like clear cutting.
Exactly. It reflects a long-term stewardship approach to natural resources.
And it's not just an environmental asset, it's economically important. The forestry and wood industry contribute billions of euros annually and employ around 1.1 million people.
1.1 million people.
Cross-forestry, timber processing, and related manufacturing like furniture and paper. Germany is a leading producer and exporter in this sector.
And forests play a growing role in the bioeconomy and renewable energy sources, in addition to their vital environmental functions as carbon sinks and protectors of soil and water.
Right. Very multifunctional.
Definitely. Finally, within the primary sectors, the material touches on fisheries. It's modest in scale compared to major fishing nations, but locally significant.
There's marine fishing, primarily in the North and Baltic Seas, with an annual catch volume typically between 10,000 and 15,000 tons, targeting species like herring, cod, mackerel, and plaice.
This activity is governed by the EU Common Fisheries Policy and supplementary national regulations aimed at ensuring sustainability and managing fish stocks.
So lots of rules.
Yes. Inland fishing is also important, leveraging Germany's extensive network of over 10,000 lakes and rivers, supporting catches of species like trout, pike, carp, and perch. Aquaculture is present, but on a smaller scale, focused mainly on freshwater species under strict regulatory control.
Even on a smaller scale, these fisheries have economic and social relevance for coastal and rural communities, particularly around port cities like Kiel, Hamburg, Rostock. Ongoing sustainability initiatives focus on minimizing environmental impact and protecting juvenile stocks.
So that gives us a picture of the core economic landscape: a strong, diversified industrial base, a dominant and expanding services sector, and foundational primary sectors managed with an eye toward sustainability.
Oh, okay. All of that economic activity, movement of raw materials, finished goods, people, data, it all relies fundamentally on robust infrastructure. The material describes transport and logistics as a cornerstone industry, renowned for its efficiency and density.
It's the circulatory system of the economy, really. The German logistics market is enormous, with projections suggesting it could reach 344.8 billion in market size in 2025.
Wow.
Germany is also recognized as the world's largest exporter of intralogistic solutions. That's the internal handling and movement of goods within warehouses and distribution centers, a market valued at 16.8 billion in exports back in 2019.
That specific detail about intralogistics really highlights a particular area of German engineering and efficiency expertise, doesn't it? Getting things moved around inside the buildings efficiently.
It does. And for getting goods from one place to another across the country and continent, the transport network is legendary.
It really is. The road network is incredibly extensive, totaling around 830,000 kilometers, including the famous 13,000 kilometers of the Autobahn.
The Autobahn.
Known for its wide reach, and yes, those sections without speed limits.
Okay.
The bit everyone knows.
Yes. But equally vital is the dense railway network, spanning 38,400 kilometers of tracks, supporting both passenger and freight transport. High-speed ICE trains connect major cities, reaching speeds of up to 300 kilometers, making travel fast and efficient.
Very impressive.
Air connectivity is crucial for international trade and travel, with 23 major airports, and Frankfurt serving as a primary international hub. And waterways, particularly the Rhine River, remain indispensable for substantial inland shipping, moving bulk goods efficiently.
Despite all those options, road freight handles the largest share of inland transport, accounting for nearly 60%.
It does. And the material even mentions a significant recent development in this sector: the acquisition of Deutsche Bahn's logistics unit, DB Schenker, by the Danish company DSV for over 14 billion.
14 billion, that's a massive deal.
Huge. It's set to create the world's largest logistics management company, underscoring Germany's central position and the global consolidation happening in this vital sector.
Interesting. What about the digital infrastructure, telecommunications? How's that looking?
The material provides recent figures showing a dynamic telecom industry. Revenue stood around 72.1 billion in 2023, showing a modest but steady increase of 1.7%. Broadband connections are widespread, with approximately 37 million lines active by the end of 2023.
Okay. Who are the big players dominating this market? Is it still dominated by Deutsche Telekom?
Deutsche Telekom is the clear market leader, yes.
Oh.
Substantial revenue and strong performance indicated in the material, projecting continued growth. Vodafone Germany is another major operator, though the material notes they faced a bit of a revenue headwind in late 2024 due to regulatory changes allowing tenants to switch broadband providers more easily.
Ah, interesting. So could regulation directly impacting the bottom line there, potentially costing them 400 million, it seems.
That's the figure mentioned, yeah. It's a specific example of how regulation can quickly reshape the competitive landscape.
How is Germany doing with next generation technologies like 5G? Are they rolling it out quickly?
Deployment is progressing significantly. Telekom Deutschland has launched standalone 5G, Telefonica Germany has achieved very high LTE coverage, 98% apparently, and Vodafone is working towards extending its 1 Gbp service widely.
And people are using it. Data usage must be climbing.
Soaring. Fixed networks transmitted 132 billion Gbps in 2023, averaging 287 gigabits per line per month. Mobile data usage saw a 36% year-on-year increase, averaging 7.2 gigabits per active SIM per month.
Wow, 36% increase on mobile. That really emphasizes the need for constant infrastructure upgrades.
Absolutely. The market has been fully liberalized since 1998, which fosters competition. And looking ahead, Deutsche Telekom, for example, is planning to integrate AI more deeply by 2027, with the aim of both boosting revenue and reducing costs.
Using AI for efficiency gains. Makes sense.
It shows a sector actively investing in advanced technologies to improve efficiency and service delivery. So we've laid out the historical journey, examined the core economic pillars, and looked at the crucial infrastructure that supports it all. Now, let's turn to the recent period, specifically post-2019, and the significant challenges the German economy has been grappling with, as detailed in this material.
Right, because it's clear the economy's resilience has been, well, seriously tested. The material notes it withstood the initial economic shocks from COVID-19 over previous winters. There was a dip in late 2021, followed by a rebound in early 2022 that brought it close to pre-crisis levels.
However, that momentum stalled. While contact-intensive services benefiting from reopening contributed to a small growth in Q1 2022, just 0.2%.
Tiny. Yeah.
Construction also saw a boost from existing orders and good weather. The overall economic recovery didn't really take off as hoped.
And global headwinds intensified significantly. The head of the Federation of German Industries, the BDI, is quoted describing the period as a stop-start year.
Yeah, stop-start.
Due to the lingering effects of the pandemic and, crucially, supply chain disruptions worsened by the conflict in Ukraine. Industrial production has been hit by persistent shortages of crucial components like semiconductors, as well as other materials.
Yeah, those shortages have been a real headache. The material even draws a contrast with earlier performance, noting that while export-import growth in December 2019 might have looked decent in isolation, the overall growth figure for 2018 was actually the worst in 5 years, plummeting from 22% to just 4.5%.
So things were already slowing down before the big recent shocks hit.
It suggests the economy had already entered a period of slower growth. Yeah, lowest since the euro debt crisis, apparently. And the euro itself declined.
And that backbone of manufacturing has been under particular pressure. The material highlights a distinct lack of growth in the first quarter of 2022.
Flatlining.
The broader global environment, the pandemic, regional geopolitical tensions, the rise of trade protectionism like U.S.-China disputes, are all described as negatively impacting the security and stability of international industrial and supply chains, making consistent manufacturing output difficult.
Absolutely. It's become a much less predictable world for manufacturers relying on global supply chains. The war in Ukraine added a new, acute layer of disruption.
How specifically?
Well, the immediate effects of sanctions in March led to a sharp decline in exports to Russia. More broadly, overall goods exports declined by 1.2% within a single month. Furthermore, the conflict exacerbated existing shortages of raw materials and intermediate goods.
Right, hitting supply chains again.
Severely impacting industries like automotive manufacturing, which was forced to suspend production lines in March due to lack of parts. Things like wiring harnesses often came from Ukraine.
So you have these persistent supply bottlenecks combined with a sudden and dramatic surge in energy prices,
A perfect storm, really.
leading directly to escalating production costs for businesses. This fed into higher producer prices, and the material notes a resulting decline in new industrial purchase orders since the beginning of that year. Businesses getting nervous.
Understandably so. This directly connects to another major challenge detailed: the sharp rise in inflation. Early warning signs appeared in the consumer economy, and consumer prices surged, hitting 7.9% in May of that year.
Nearly 8%. That's high. The material includes powerful anecdotes that bring this abstract statistic home. We hear about individuals like Verbeek actively changing her commute from car to bus or bicycle specifically to cut costs
Yeah, adapting daily life.
in the face of rapidly rising fuel prices. And Tanya Seidel, a homemaker, re-entering the workforce because she felt her grocery bills, which exceeded €100, weren't actually purchasing a substantial amount of food anymore. These examples show the real-world impact on household budgets.
They vividly illustrate how the cost of living became a dominant concern. The material states that private consumption, a key driver of growth, showed a lack of expansion in the first quarter, suggesting that while spending on services increased as restrictions eased.
People going out again.
Right. But the surge in overall costs offset spending power elsewhere. People had less money left for other things.
And the outlook for inflation, based on analysis at the time, was quite bleak. Projections anticipated Germany's inflation rate averaging 6.8% in 2023, which would be the highest level since 1974.
Since the 70s. That's significant. This was expected to significantly hinder private spending and contribute to a pessimistic atmosphere for retailers.
The reasoning provided is that while the government did implement various relief measures, including tax reductions and direct transfers, these were unlikely to fully compensate for the loss of buying power caused by the rapid price increases.
Exactly. Although disposable income was projected to rise, the anticipated increase was lower than the projected rise in the cost of living. So people were still worse off in real terms.
Although, it's worth noting, the material does calculate that some specific price reductions from government relief packages, like removing the EEG Renewable Energy Levy, the temporary 9 public transport ticket,
The Euro 9 ticket, yes.
and a temporary cut in fuel duty, were estimated to reduce the headline inflation rate by about 0.5 percentage points. Small relief in the face of much larger pressures, but something.
Every little helps, I suppose. But what were those fundamental drivers of this inflationary surge, according to the material? Several factors are listed. One was the reversal of the temporary COVID-19-related VA rate reduction.
Okay, a technical factor.
Another was the strong rebound of the global economy and worldwide demand, which led to dramatic increases in the cost of oil and gas on international markets.
Right, global demand bouncing back, push prices up.
The introduction of Germany's carbon tax also added to energy costs. And those ongoing supply chain disruptions meant reduced availability of many goods and components, which inherently pushes prices upward. Less stuff available, prices go up.
Simple economics, yeah.
The material also mentions a base effect from the unusually low prices seen in 2020, particularly due to the temporary VAT cut and depressed mineral oil prices during the early pandemic period. That made subsequent price increases look even larger in comparison.
Makes sense mathematically.
And importantly, it's noted that significant price increases happening earlier in the supply chain at the production or wholesale stage hadn't even been fully passed on to consumer prices yet due to supply chain blockages. So more pain was potentially still to come.
What stands out is the conclusion that energy costs were the root cause of this inflation surge. Specific examples provided are striking. Heating oil prices up 76.5% compared to 2020 levels.
76%.
Fuel prices up 28.4%, and energy products overall saw a 14% increase. Just huge jumps.
Driven primarily by that rapid increase in global demand as economies reopened, outstripping supply capacity. The CO2 tax, phased in since the start of 2021, also played a growing role in contributing to energy price inflation.
And it wasn't confined just to energy, was it? Food prices also rose.
Yes. Food prices also rose above the average inflation rate, climbing 4.9% by September 2021. The material attributes this, in part, to specific events like inclement weather in key agricultural regions like Spain and Italy impacting harvests.
So weather impacting food supply, pushing prices up?
Exactly. Overall, the analysis points to this period of high inflation being predominantly supply-side driven, meaning the problem stemmed more from the rising cost and scarcity of production inputs like energy, raw materials, components.
Right. Not necessarily runaway consumer demand.
Rather than excessive consumer demand pulling prices up. It's noted that core inflation, excluding these volatile energy and food components, was around 2.9%, only slightly above the European Central Bank's target at the time.
Okay, so mainly an energy and supply shock story. Amidst these economic headwinds, how has the labor market fared? The picture here, based on the material, sounds a bit complex.
It is. While there's a continued recovery from the pandemic, the momentum has been slowed by the war in Ukraine, those same supply bottlenecks impacting production, and persistent skilled labor shortages.
Ah, the skills shortage problem again.
Yes, that's a recurring theme. Projections from one source anticipated solid workforce growth, adding around 626,000 people in 2022 and another 190,000 in 2023. The unemployment rate was projected to decrease from 5.7% in 2021 to an average of 5.0% over 2022 and 2023.
Okay, so initially looking quite positive, but looking at our recent data presented in another source, we see a slightly different picture as of early 2025. Approximately 45.6 million people were employed in January 2025.
Still a very high number.
The employment rate reached a record high of 77.5% in the fourth quarter of 2023, the highest figure since 1992. But as of February 2025, the unemployment rate stood at 6.2%, with 2.89 million people unemployed.
So unemployment ticked up from those earlier projections. What's interesting in that more recent data, though, is the note that the increase in unemployment was less than initially forecast. It rose by only 5,000 compared to an anticipated 15,000.
So while the rate is higher than hoped, maybe the market is showing some underlying stability, some resilience despite the challenges.
That seems to be the implication, yes. The material also describes shifts in employment across sectors, confirming the dominance of services, which now account for 75.5% of the workforce, while industries like manufacturing and construction saw a reduction in workers in 2024.
A continuing shift towards services.
Exactly. And critically, a major long-term challenge highlighted is demographic change. Projections point to a potential shortfall of as many as 7 million workers by 2035 due to the aging population and declining birth rates.
7 million workers. That's a huge gap looming.
So despite current resilience and relatively low unemployment, the demographic cliff presents a very real and significant future challenge.
It's probably one of the biggest long-term structural issues facing the economy.
Finally, on recent trends, the material touches on fiscal policy adjustments. The government has moved towards a neutral fiscal stance. They've managed to significantly reduce the financing deficit, cutting it by 50% compared to the previous year, down to around $65 billion, getting the deficit under control. This reduction trend was expected to continue, with projections suggesting the shortfall could shrink further to less than $12 billion by 2023. And linked to the shrinking deficit and an increase in GDP, Germany's overall government debt level was projected to decrease to 62.6% of GDP by 2023.
Okay, aiming for more fiscal stability there. So we've seen the historical foundations and the current structure, and we've delved into the recent turbulence and challenges. But despite these headwinds, Germany's economy clearly possesses deep underlying strengths. Let's explore what factors, according to this material, are key to Germany's enduring economic success.
Right. A foundational element is sound economic strategy and policy. The material points to a well-developed system of policy control and governance. They mention proactive fiscal measures and a supportive monetary environment, recognizing that while monetary policy is set by the ECB for the Eurozone, Germany's influence and integration within that framework are significant.
And they highlight continuous government reforms aimed at improving the market environment, encouraging job creation, and fostering growth across sectors, sort of constant tinkering and improvement.
A favorable trade climate is also listed as a crucial factor. Germany benefits from a robust trade system, well-established international relations, and active participation in regional and multilateral trade frameworks, constantly working to broaden and secure its export markets. They're deeply plugged into the global system.
Definitely export-oriented. The material even provides a specific, almost granular example to illustrate this point. Apple juice.
Apple juice? Really?
Yeah, China is the world's largest producer and exporter of apple juice concentrate. And while much of that goes to the US and Japan, Germany is highlighted as a major destination. In 2011, out of China's $1.07 billion in apple juice exports, a significant $60 million went specifically to Germany.
Huh. That's a fascinating little detail. It shows how deeply Germany is integrated into global supply chains and trade flows, even for specific commodities like that.
Exactly. The material also includes abundant resources as a factor for success. But this goes beyond traditional natural resources, although Germany does have some and an advantageous geography. Crucially, under this category, they include the excellent educational system and state-of-the-art science and technology.
Ah, so framing human capital and know-how as key resources, that makes a lot of sense. It underscores their economic weight.
And the commitment to cutting-edge science and technology is clearly identified as vital.
Yes, devotion to technological advancement is described as playing a vital role in fostering economic growth and maintaining competitiveness. Specific areas where German technology is strong include automotive production, software engineering, and electronic information technology.
The material even lists 6 major technologies where Germany is considered world-leading and subject to particularly strict standards.
Mhm.
Nuclear energy, though, as we discussed, this is being phased out.
Right, the energy vent.
The automotive industry, rail transit, semiconductors, medical devices, and optical lenses.
These are sectors requiring high precision, advanced research, and skilled labor, areas where Germany has historically excelled. Another source adds compelling detail on Germany's investment in innovation, citing high R&D expenditure, 112.6 billion in 2021,
112 billion.
with R&D intensity spending as a percentage of GDP standing at 3.13% in 2022, notably surpassing the EU average.
That level of investment really shows a clear strategic priority. Germany also ranks highly in global innovation indices, placed 13th for innovation inputs, what goes into research, and 6th for innovation outputs, results like patents in 2024.
So they're good at both putting the resources in and getting results out. On the European Innovation Scoreboard, it achieves a score of 111.6, well above the EU average, indicating effectiveness in translating investment into tangible innovation.
And funding mechanisms like the Deutsche Forschungsgemeinschaft, DFG, and specific strategic initiatives further bolster this. The government has an ambitious target to increase R&D expenditure even further, aiming for 3.5% of GDP by 2025.
We're really pushing on R&D.
And importantly, this isn't just abstract research. The material highlights significant targeted investment, such as $2 billion in semiconductor subsidies via the European Chips Act.
Ah, yeah, the CHIPS Act. That's a direct policy response, isn't it? To bolster local chip production and reduce dependence on potentially vulnerable international supply chains, using technological strength to address recent challenges.
Exactly, leveraging that R&D focus strategically.
So the commitment to innovation and R&D is clearly a core strategic pillar, especially in response to recent global disruptions and the need to remain competitive in high-tech industries.
Beyond these domestic factors, Germany's economy is profoundly shaped by its international connections. The material provides examples of specific key relationships and areas of cooperation.
Yes, they detail Germany's long-standing and pivotal membership in the World Bank Group, where it has been a member since 1952 and currently holds the position of the fourth largest shareholder.
Fourth largest. That substantial shareholding gives Germany significant influence within a key global financial and development institution. And they collaborate on specific international challenges. The material mentions a joint initiative with the World Bank, launched in July 2024, focused on education and skills development in the Sahel region of Africa.
Right. This initiative aims to expand access to quality education with a focus on vulnerable populations like girls, refugees, displaced persons, nomadic children, training educators in STEM fields, and strengthening overall education systems across the region through collaboration.
They also undertook a joint visit to West and Central Africa, specifically Benin and Burkina Faso, in March 2024, aimed at supporting local communities and addressing factors contributing to instability through development programs and fostering economic opportunities, using development as a tool for stability.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And Germany is a major contributor to global climate change and biodiversity funding through the World Bank framework. They pledged $305 million in hybrid capital in late 2023 as part of a larger initiative mobilizing $11 billion.
Big numbers again.
With plans to utilize these funds and others to channel up to $70 billion over the next decade via World Bank entities like the IBRD and IDA for climate and development projects.
These examples clearly demonstrate Germany leveraging its financial power and international standing to contribute to global development, climate action, stability, often in areas relevant to its long-term interests. The material also provides examples of bilateral relationships, highlighting Uzbekistan as a case study.
Uzbekistan. Interesting. Diplomatic relations since 1992. Economically, bilateral trade surpassed $1 billion in 2023. German investments in Uzbekistan are significant, totaling around $5.5 billion, with approximately $4 billion of that being relatively recent investments in sectors like energy, mining, chemicals, transport infrastructure.
There's serious investment flowing there. There's active engagement at the business level, too, with the 8th Uzbekistan-Germany Business Council meeting taking place in June 2024.
And an interesting and strategic development mentioned is the Migration and Workforce Agreement signed in September 2024. This agreement is designed to facilitate the migration of skilled Uzbek workers to Germany.
Ah, linking back to the labor shortage.
No, exactly. To help address labor shortages in Germany, while also including provisions regarding the return of certain immigrants. It's a direct link between foreign policy, bilateral relations, and addressing a domestic economic challenge.
Very pragmatic. They are also exploring potential energy partnerships, which is understandable given global energy security concerns. High-level diplomatic exchanges like Chancellor Scholz's visit in September 2024, his first to Central Asia, signal a commitment to enhancing cooperation across various fields.
And cultural and educational ties, including a historical German minority in Uzbekistan, also form a basis for this relationship. These specific examples, from multilateral institutions like the World Bank to bilateral ties with countries like Uzbekistan, illustrate Germany's active and strategic engagement on the international stage, serving both global development goals and its own economic and social needs.
Let's return briefly to that resource we mentioned earlier, the education system, which this material frames as a fundamental enabler for the economy, providing that skilled workforce. How does it actually work?
Yes, the material outlines the well-defined structure. It begins with early childhood education, or kindergarten, which is not mandatory but widely attended. Primary school, Grundschule, is compulsory starting at age 6, typically running for 4 years, though some states extend it to 6.
Okay, standard start, then it branches out.
After primary school, secondary education diversifies into distinct pathways. The Hauptschule, generally leading towards vocational training. The Realschule, offering a broader education. The Gymnasium, which is college preparatory and culminates in the Abitur qualification for university entry. And the Gesamtschule, a comprehensive school combining elements of the others.
Different tracks for different goals, and the vocational training is key, right?
Absolutely. A hallmark of the German system, and crucial for its industrial base, is the vocational training system known as Dual Ausbildung. This is the dual system combining practical, paid training within a company with theoretical instruction at a vocational school.
Learning on the job and in the classroom.
Exactly. It's globally recognized for producing highly skilled tradespeople and technicians. Tertiary education then covers universities and universities of applied sciences.
School attendance is compulsory from age 6, and most schooling is state-run and free of charge. Notably, home education is generally prohibited.
However, the material also honestly highlights challenges within this system that have economic repercussions. Childcare shortages are a significant issue, leading to overcrowded facilities and even closures, which directly impact parents' ability to work and contribute to the labor force.
Right, that's a real practical problem for families and the economy.
And the integration of migrants presents challenges, particularly regarding language support for non-German-speaking students, which constrains school resources and is a recurring topic in political discussions.
Mm-hmm. A complex issue.
It's interesting that the material also mentions specific educational initiatives linked directly to economic shifts, such as climate education programs for professionals in traditional sectors like farmers and brewers to promote more sustainable practices, adapting education to new needs.
Finally, the material briefly touches on specific geographical areas designed to facilitate economic activity under special conditions. Free economic zones. What are those exactly?
These are designated areas within Germany operating under different customs and tax regulations to promote international trade and commerce. They are utilized by both German and international businesses looking to operate efficiently within the European market, kind of like special trade hubs.
Okay. The material distinguishes between types. Commercial zones, often located near major ports or airports, primarily used for storage, repackaging, displaying goods without full customs duties until they enter the domestic market.
Right. And industrial zones geared more towards manufacturing and production activities under these special conditions.
So what are the benefits?
Key characteristics include customs and tax exemptions on goods stored or processed within the zone, strategic locations near major transport and logistics hubs, and often streamlined regulatory procedures to ease business operations. They serve as important nodes for global supply chains interacting with the German and European economy.
Got it. Okay, so we've completed our deep dive. Tracing the economic history, breaking down the core sectors that power the economy, looking at the infrastructure that connects it all, examining the significant challenges Germany has faced in recent years, identifying the underlying strengths that contribute to its resilience, exploring its international economic relationships, the foundational role of education, and specific tools like free economic zones. That was a lot.
It was a comprehensive look. We've seen an economy with incredibly deep structural strengths, built on industrial excellence, technological innovation, a highly skilled workforce, and profound integration into global trade networks. But the material also provides a clear picture of an economy tested by recent shocks, manufacturing disruptions, supply chain vulnerabilities, and a significant surge in inflation, largely driven by external supply-side pressures like energy costs.
Yeah, those challenges are undeniable.
The labor market shows resilience, but faces that undeniable long-term demographic challenge we talked about.
Major ongoing structural shifts, like the energy wend towards renewables and the drive for digital transformation, are reshaping industries. The material offers projections that, while showing a path forward, underscore the uncertainties tied to global events and highlight the continued strategic investment in R&D, sustainability, and supply chain resilience as crucial for the future.
It's a complex, dynamic picture of an economy adapting to a changing world, leveraging its historical strengths while confronting new realities. It's not standing still.
Indeed. And as you reflect on everything we've discussed, from the deep history to the recent data points and future challenges outlined in this material, perhaps it leaves you pondering this question. Given Germany's significant reliance on exports, its determined and costly push towards renewable energy, and the looming demographic shifts impacting its workforce, how fundamentally might Germany's definition of what constitutes economic strength need to change and adapt over the next decade?